get started here. A slow start, just to welcoming everyone. Thank you for joining us online. We did have an event last year around September time at George Brown, and it was in person and it was also remote. So it was a bit of a hybrid. It was a first for us. It was very interesting. Little challenges with technology, of course, but it is winter, still winter. So we thought we'd keep this online and the convenience for a lot of people that can join us from other parts of time zones, other parts of the country, or those that just couldn't come to a physical location. My name is Ian Chalmers. Welcome to DesignMeets. I'm the principal and creative director with Pivot Design Group in Toronto and the founder of DesignMeets. In an essential step towards truth and reconciliation, and as members of the Canadian Society, we acknowledge the traditional lands that our studio occupies. We're grateful for these lands and have the utmost respect and recognition of Indigenous peoples, their circular practices, and ways of knowing. Our path forward is together. Here are our stats. Look at these. It seems like such a long time ago in 2010, we started this event just as a way to kind of get out of our comfort zone and meet other people that have similar interests. It turned into a bit of a community platform for exchanging ideas, ways to get inspired, ways to collaborate with our peers, and find meaningful ways to put design and its power to transform to work. You can see here we did sustainability, circular design. Those one came before the other, of course. We did an event with Marshall McLuhan. Well, he wasn't there in person, but it was his centenary. Recently on AI, everyone's interested in AI these days. And then DEI. That was just September 29th. We explored DEI and its impact on design. DEI, for those that might not know, stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, and has become broadly recognized as the litmus test for creating fairness and achieving social justice. Today, it's a great way of measuring our relative progress in recognizing those contributions of people who are unrepresented and creating environments where people can feel respected, included, and valued. For more information on this event, please go to designmeets.ca. That brings us to our current event on collaboration. One day, if you all recall, we went remote, and that changed how we thought and how we think about work. For the first time, design felt really different, and it kind of raised questions about the nature of where creativity and collaboration work exists. By the way, this is astronaut Bruce McCandless, who became the first astronaut in 1984 to move out in space without being connected to a spacecraft. So he was being quite remote in his work. So fast forward to today, 2023, and we're in this sort of hybrid work paradox. Some are working remotely, some are working in physical space, and some are working in both modalities. So whether we're collaborating remotely or collaborating in person, it's still collaboration. It's not about where, but about how. We've discovered through technology that this collaboration can be synchronous and asynchronous. It's about the creativity. And the most effective approach to this creative collaboration can vary on the person, the team, the organization, the task at hand, and the context in which the work is being done. And each approach, as we all know, have different advantages and different disadvantages. And we're going to get into this today, hopefully. And different people may find these approaches more effective for their creative process. What's the best course for creativity and the value of collaboration for our industry? What lies ahead for the future of our design work in studios, in offices, in organizations? What are the implications for training and recruiting the next generation of designers? And are we prepared to adapt to their preferences? Our design industry and the way we work and collaborate is definitely in flux. So let's get into our session today and hear from our panel. And they're going to share some points of view, which hopefully will help to inform what the future is going to hold for collaboration. We have three amazing guests. They're a mix of entrepreneurs, human-centered designers, practitioners, and professors who will have perspectives on this way of how we are each creatively collaborating. Today's format is three speakers, 5 to 10 minutes each, and they'll present their thoughts and experiences and stories, followed by a Q&A. And to our audience, please feel free to post any questions in the chat, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. We must collaborate. Now I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Ranee Lee. Ranee is an industrial designer and associate professor of industrial design at OCAD University. She is the founder of DesignWith, a design incubator for democratizing the learnings and creation of design through a corporation academia community partnership. And that is in environmental and social sustainability. You can read more about Ranee with her bio posted on DesignMeets. Sorry, Ranee, I couldn't read it all today, but I hopefully captured the best parts. So we're gonna hand it over to you now. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, so my name is Ranee Lee, and I just thought maybe I'm gonna shift my screen just to show you the space that we're in. And I think with what Ian is talking about with collaboration, this is actually what happens here. And so obviously you can see that the space I'm in, where I'm virtually with you, yet there's people in the space. We've got a service design designer here along with the design intern working together. And I think this was not planned, but this is absolutely the example of collaboration that happens here at DesignWith. So I'm here to share a little bit about DesignWith. So it's a lab, and I would say it is the future of collaboration. I'm open to hearing your questions and what you have to say after, but allow me to, I guess, introduce and talk about what DesignWith is all about. So DesignWith is in the heart of the city. So you'll probably see people walking behind me. I am inside the CF Toronto Eaton Centre, which is, if you're in Toronto, it's at Yonge and Dundas, inside the mall. So I recently learned, actually, just having done some research about the mall, that it actually welcomes 15 million people annually here, which, to give you an idea, is more than Disneyland, Disney World, and Las Vegas Strip combined. So that's a lot of people in this space. And I say this as an important point because I think that you want to design, when you want to design in collaboration with others, you have to first be accessible. So yeah, you can see here in this picture that this is our storefront. It is only 700 square feet. So we have really designed the space to be modular and functional for all the different ways that we use the space. So yeah, so let's talk about accessibility. I think first it needs to be easy to get to, accessibility for people that you want to collaborate with. Sure, there's always online. As you can see, I'm here online remotely meeting with you. And in this case, we can meet anywhere and everywhere. But I would say in the post-pandemic world, yes, it is hybrid. But I would say that people are also craving community. And I feel like at DesignWith, this is actually what we've experienced being here for 7 months, actually, only. So I think in order to build community, you have to be first accessible to people, and then we can think about collaboration. So I'm just giving you a map because I don't know how many of you are from Toronto, but so this is the map of downtown Toronto, and it shows the location of DesignWith, which is that middle circle. And the reason why I'm showing this is because it is actually smack dab right in the middle of OCAD University, which is where I work and where all of the designers, if it's not from the design community, if they're from OCAD, then the relationship to the location is important. And then also to the right of you is Regent Park. And I say that because specifically, we really work with middle career women who sew as part of their livelihood program here at DesignWith. And that locality is really important because, to give you an idea, that's about a mile away from walking distance from Regent Park to DesignWith. So for those of you who don't know Regent Park, it is a former social housing neighborhood that has since been revitalized into a mixed-use neighborhood. It is home to many immigrants and a very diverse community. So I have been co-designing with groups of women from this neighborhood for the past 7 years. So yes, DesignWith is 7 months old, but I would say it's been sort of 7 years in iteration to get us to where we are today. So yeah, from working with the women in Regent Park for the past 7 years, I very quickly saw that some people live in poverty, not because they don't have skills, but perhaps it's just a misalignment of what we inherently value in people. So like I said, DesignWith is 7 months old. We opened our doors June 23 last year. Yeah, so how it all started actually was just the name DesignWith was designing with people. So this idea of collaboration is really, really rooted to what DesignWith is about. I would kind of distinguish it from co-designing, but really focusing the work more on participatory design, because I believe that in participatory design is really where people are able to bring their whole selves in and not just their skills. But, you know, to give you an idea, you see a picture here of the two women we work closely with, and Zora and Raphael are both, they work hours that fit their schedule. So it's not necessarily 9 to 5 like many of us work, but it's 10 to 2. So that allows them to be able to be present in their families and all the other responsibilities that they have to do. So I guess when I say bringing their whole selves in, that's something that in collaboration we really have to think about when we do participatory design. And also I would say, I know Ian brings up the idea of democratizing the learnings of design as what we do here. And I think when we do that, it's also a way to really blur that teaching and learning, you know, so they're not coming here to necessarily learn from me, but we're learning from each other. And that's really what sets this lab apart from being in academia, as an example. So yeah, DesignWith, you can see here, it's designers like myself and other people who are in the space today that I would call the creative collective. And so we work with different groups of designers based on different projects that we work on. But I would say more importantly, with the participatory design is that we really work with the community alongside with them, and they're actually physically here in the space with us. So this, like I said, was iterated over the years. In 2019, just before the pandemic, I actually had brought my classroom from OCAD into Regent Park. So that iterated over time as to how this participatory design experience really looked like, and it changed. And so now it's in, I would say, a very neutral space. It's in a mall where most people are very comfortable with, and they come here to work on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. So I would say this is an open invitation to those of you who are listening, that if it's something you're curious about, you know, come find us, I guess either through Instagram, and it's a really, and for you to see how you can collaborate with us as well. So DesignWith's framework, as Ian had mentioned, sits at the center of a partnership between academia, corporation, and community. So academia being OCAD, Cadillac Fairview is the corporation in commercial real estate, who is the owner of Eaton Center. And how they're in this is because they really believe in investing in vibrant spaces, and it really also resonated with their mission and vision of transforming communities. And so, as mentioned, the community we're working with is the Regent Park Sewing Studio. So the DesignWith framework is specifically around design for social innovation and also the circular economy. And I just want to emphasize that although Cadillac Fairview is a global company, I want to present this framework as a very local one that can be perhaps replicated in other cities and countries, that also have a sort of strong, similar triad of partnership between academia, corporation, and community. And I would say, I think the common thread that runs through this is a shared value. So I had mentioned earlier that I just recently came back from Oslo, Norway, with my intern actually to talk to like-minded individuals to see if this framework is something that can also be adopted there. So it's not a framework that you necessarily follow to a T, but because your locality might differ, right? For instance, you might not have a design school, but maybe it's a design firm or a social lab or simply a group of like-minded designers. So I say like-minded people because I think collaboration starts with shared values. But I suppose not always. I'm sure you can always say like you don't have to have shared values in order to have in order to collaborate. But I would like to argue, but the kind of collaboration that you want to be part of is best when you have shared values. So I have this picture. Sorry, it's not a great picture of all of us, but this is to show that Ian and I met at an exhibition that we had here at DesignWith. I think that many designers are attracted to, or you attract very like-minded and similar designers when you have sort of a strong vision of the kind of collaboration that you're looking for. So obviously I'm being biased and proposing that DesignWith is the goal of the kind of collaboration that we should aim for, but I would like to say that I think by doing so, I have found that it's been a great way to really attract like-minded people who share my values as well and the values of DesignWith, such as Ian and Anna, who are pictured here on the slide. So yeah, I'd like to just, I guess, end off with a couple thoughts that I think to push the boundaries of what collaboration can look like. So in my experience here at DesignWith, I would like to say that it's beyond human. How can we consider materials, the making process, the end of life of products, and also consider circular economy, our environment, locality, the idea of sustainability as part of the process right from the start. I think a lot of these things can't be sort of just a thought that you infuse in the end, but I would like to say that in order to do collaboration, which is more life-centered, and I know that is a terminology that Ian will also bring up in future design meets, is that how can we really start to consider more than just a human designs centered practice. And I would like to propose that I think if it's life-centered, it's something that you have to consider in your collaboration right from the very beginning. Yeah, I think the future of collaboration is this, and at the heart of it are design practices like DesignWith, and I would say that it is like a caring design practice when people have these shared values of really considering people and processes at the same time. And I think my very last slide is simply just to say that I think because the power of collaboration is truly a transformative force, and I would say a lot of the people who have been in and through DesignWith can probably say the same thing. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Ranee. Great stuff. And you're doing it on location, which is fabulous. And I did not ask Ranee to put that photo of me in there. That was just purely coincidental, but I did learn a lot from you by being in that space that day. So thank you. All right, Raphael is up next. Raphael Joseph is a UX and human-centered designer at Different. And Different is spelt different, which is a strategy and design consultancy based in Ottawa. Raphael has led many meaningful activities such as persona workshops, empathy mapping, ecosystem mapping, and overall works around user experience design. He believes that a healthy collaborative environment in the team is essential for the success of the client's project work. Welcome, Raphael. Over to you.
Thank you, Ian. And thank you, Ranee. It was a really inspiring presentation on what your team has been doing. It's really cool what you guys have been doing. So my name is Raphael. I'm part of Different. It's a small UX strategic design consultancy based in Ottawa. And I've been part of this team for now 2 years. And it's been an amazing time that I've spent in this company. And I've learned a lot. As you can see, I'm the youngest in this panel, which means I don't have as much experience as many of them, but I've learned a few things about collaboration because in a way, I call myself a pandemic baby, a pandemic designer baby, because I started working as a full-time designer in the pandemic. And Different is a fully remote company, which makes if you get that, it means that we don't have an office space. We all work remotely, and I've been working here for 2 years with the hundreds of projects that I've worked on, and I've learned something about collaboration through this time. And I titled this called as building teams that collaborate with purpose. One thing I learned about collaboration is that collaboration is about building teams, and if you're working in a small design agency, it's if you all want to collaborate properly. And I was just thinking about this talk, and I was thinking, what do I want out of this talk, and what would be my objective? And the first thing that came to me is that my objective is to help designers and team members here that they can facilitate a culture of trust, honesty, and intentional collaboration in today's post-pandemic hybrid work environments. I think those 3 words, trust, honesty, and intention, are really important when it comes to collaboration, because without that, our collaboration just goes out of hand, and there are no clear outcomes about it. So this is what I really want to focus on today when we think about collaboration. The first thing that comes to my mind, the first mistake I made as a designer when I started at Different, because it's fully remote, you start a new job and you want to impress your boss as a new designer. And I remember as soon as I got my first real complex user interface task, I sat there in front of my laptop for hours trying to find the perfect solution. And I realized, oh my gosh, I'm just spending hours the whole time trying to figure out the perfect solution. And that's, I think, a mistake that most new designers can make, where they try to take all of the load of this world on their shoulders and trying to, figure that out. And that was the first mistake. And I call this as the isolation cave that most designers get into, especially when you're working from home most of the time. You can get into this trap of isolating yourself, trying to figure out. And the learning, and I realized that I wasn't making any progress through that. And that really, puts you into this capsule and you're not making any progress. But learning out of that I had is that progress wins over perfection, and intentionally collaborative teams move faster with better products. So if you really want to move fast as a team, I think you have to put intention and collaborate with other people in your team to make that happen. And with that, you can move faster in your product development. And that is something which I actually learned in the last 2 years of working fully remote at Different. What does it really look like to be intentionally collaborative? I think one thing that I have learned is to ask for help. I think we as designers, we can stick into this capsule and be like, oh, I want to figure, but asking and offering help is like a major aspect of collaborating with people around you. I would suggest 3 things. Create a trusted feedback group inside your company. And it starts by actually saying, hey, can I get your feedback on this? And asking people back and forth about that. And also, it also works if you offer your time, make some time out of your way to help other people with their stuff. Ask them, hey, do you need any help? I've got a few minutes. Let me know if you need my help or my feedback or anything. And that's where the culture starts of creating a collaborative environment. I realized one thing, that your collaborative environment shouldn't only consist of your coworkers. It can also cross those boundaries. It can be your friends and your trusters. And if your company allows you to share your work with your friends and take feedback, I think that's a cool thing. You can just ask your family members or friends, and that's something which really worked for me. This is a cool actually a research that Gartner did about how intentional collaborative teams are actually successful. They talk about this 4 modes. You can go on their website and check out this article. It's called 4 Modes of Collaboration. And feel free to take screenshots of my slides because there's some resources and some text which might help you later. So I'll suggest for sure go and check around how intentional you can be in your team. The next mistake which I realized, not necessarily a mistake, but a challenge that most teams have is that how can we maintain the same energy of in-person collaboration in hybrid environments? Like when you're coming online, people don't really feel that they are so engaged in the collaborative activities. And that is something which I faced while I was doing these sessions with all of my clients. Is that not everybody would have the same amount of interest. One thing I learned through that is often people lack direction, purpose, and trust in the activity, or sometimes even the team which is collaborating together. They don't have they don't have, oh, what are we doing here for? Why are we having this moment? So I think this is really important that we understand that when you're creating a collaborative environment, you need to direct people, you need to inform what the purpose of this collaborative activity is, and so that you can build trust. One thing I learned is we can be strategic in your collaboration. It's like when you start a collaborative activity, clarify your expectations before entering a session. That really helps. You can define roles and responsibilities for your participants and tell them what are you actually expecting from them. It's also useful if you know your audience and you clarify your objective in the session and tell them, oh, this is what I'm looking for. Also, one interesting thing I learned is that you can share the outcomes of your previous design collaborative sessions that you have done, which gives them context and go like, oh, I think this kind of works. And I can you know, if I participate in this, this will actually help our team. So you can be strategic in your collaboration. Next, but maybe the most simplest, but the most hardest thing is to be grateful for their input and give credit to them. I realized when I would talk highly about my team members, about how they have been helpful to me in my in my work and how they have helped me collaborate, and actually talk highly about them in front of my leads, they automatically create a culture of collaboration in your company. And this is a bit off than what we are used to. We want to talk about ourselves to get that promotion, but sometimes it's useful if you want to have a healthy environment of collaboration in your team. You can talk about that with your leads and be like, hey, this guy was really helpful. Last but not the least, I think we need to build a culture of trust and honesty in teams. And how do we do that? We do that by actually building relationship outside of work. We try to hang out with each other outside of work. That kind of builds trust. And when you're trying to work in a collaborative environment and trying to do collaboration activities, it opens up the conversation for more input and more honesty and more genuine talk and just comfort that they can have. I know this is not possible with clients, but when you do it strategically by making them comfortable in that space, I think they can also open up. And I think if you ask me about what is the future of collaboration, I would say it's a challenge for us as designers and design leads to facilitate that culture where people trust each other and they're open to collaborate with honesty. And just beyond tools, I think we need to empathize with our teams and learn to strategically collaborate through that. Here are some tools which I think have really helped me. We use a lot of Slack. I think we huddle constantly. That has helped us to move faster. We use Kumo Space sometimes, which is a pretty cool application, which one of my teammates found for us. And then here's a pretty cool a podcast by Andrew Huberman, for those who know about optimizing your workplace. And this can help you in creating that perfect space for yourself when you're at home or you're doing hybrid work and actually collaborate successfully. Thank you.
That's great, Raphael. Fabulous. Very empathetic presentation. Well done. You must work for a great company.
I do. I'm proud of it.
That's a shout out to Dom.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. Thanks so much. All right, Paddy, over to you. I'd like to introduce Paddy Harrington, who is the founder of Frontier and founding director, which I have here, Paddy, as a design office. It's very short and to the point. Paddy is a veteran. He has almost 20 years of experience in the design field and has worked in research, architecture, advertising, and design. Paddy is a writer, filmmaker, and has spoken at several design conferences. He was formerly the SVP of Design Innovation and Digital Creative Director at Indigo Books. And before that, he was Executive Creative Director at Bruce Mao Design. Please welcome Paddy. Over to you.
Thanks, Ian. I'm going to share my screen. Okay, so like I'm sure most people on this call, something that I've been completely obsessed with for the past couple of months is the whole world of ChatGPT. And more, maybe deeper than that is the question is, if you're a person in the creative field, what does it really mean for us as practitioners? And it's really some pretty existential questions. And as a designer, I think by definition, you're an optimist. And so while I, at the beginning, was maybe concerned about how, it might help my kids cheat on essays and, all the kind of worries, as I spent more time living with it, I started to unpack it a little more and start to build my own sort of relationship with the idea of what this tool can do for us. And so when the opportunity came to speak on the subject of collaboration, I thought, what better way to use that as another experiment almost to think about and understand what the possibilities of ChatGPT are, and think about it as a tool in that process. And so what you see here is ChatGPT, or as I've started to affectionately call it, Charlie Generative Pre-trained Transformer, just because I like to use its full name. It turns out that that's what GPT stands for. I'm not sure how many people knew that. I certainly didn't before this exercise. And then my very first thing I did was actually ask ChatGPT, okay, I don't want to call you Chat. I want to call you something different. So what are some gender neutral names that start with C? And it gave me a list, and I chose the one I liked best, which is Charlie. And so what this does, it's at its fundamental, I've really been trying to understand it like deeply, what is actually going on here. And so at its fundamental level, all it's really doing is trying to finish a sentence. So it looks at a word and then looks at the probabilities of what word which should come after it. It chooses that word and then just keeps going in that direction. Obviously, I'm simplifying it a bit based on a prompt it's given and then what it starts to write. So it's always sort of finishing its own sentence based on probabilities. The answers, though, are really based on what billions of web pages and digitized books have said about the subject in question. And so if you think about it, it really is a form of fundamental collaboration at the scale of all of humanity. So everything all of us together and anyone who's come before us has ever done and put down on a website or in a book that's been digitized, all of that thinking, it's basically pulling the very best of it and then combining it and then putting it out as a result. And so, naturally I thought, okay, well, I'm started down this path. Let's see where we can go with this. So I looked at the question that was the prompt for this exercise, which was, is creativity best done in isolation or as a shared experience collaborating with others? And so I have to say, like, when I thought about this question, my immediate thought and response was yes, like it's both, actually. It's the combination of being certain things done in isolation, but also certain parts of it being done as an experience collaborating with others, which is, I think just a kind of a commonly accepted answer. I think what's different about this answer, though, is that it's not intuitively, like, it's not a sensible answer. It's an answer that has a bit of snark in it, frankly. Like, it's trying to be it wasn't trying to be clever in the moment, but it was more like it's an unconventional answer to that question. And, but I think it's direct. It makes the point. We all understand what it means. Then I turned to ChatGPT, or as I said, Charlie Generative Pre-trained Transformer, and asked the same question. And it came back with this: both isolation and collaboration can be effective for fostering creativity, as isolation allows for deep focus and uninterrupted exploration, while collaboration brings together different perspectives and experiences. The best approach depends on the individual and the project, and the combination of both approaches may be most effective. Ultimately, the key is to find the approach that works best for the individual's particular creative process. I thought, yet again, such a great answer, smart, succinct, to the point, it's clear, I understand it, it's thoughtful, it did recognize that there's sort of two sides of it. And I felt satisfied. It's like, okay, that's a really good, like that's an answer that if I was, especially say if I was a student asking this question, I would probably put forward an answer like this and say, yeah, this feels like a good, as I said, comprehensive answer. So for me, ultimately, and I tried to really keep this, I embraced the idea of the 5 slides. So I tried to do it all in 5 only. But Charlie GPT, the way I sort of think about this more and more is that it's really the more clear and comprehensive choice. Like if you want to get good, solid, well-researched, thoughtful in the way that it can be thoughtful answers, then really Charlie GPT is an incredibly powerful tool to help you get there. You GPT, on the other hand, as a creative person, I feel like where our still value lies, which may disappear over time, who knows, but at least right now I feel pretty sure in saying that for us, what we are as generative pre-trained transformers is the more captivating and clever choice. And a world of intense noise, information being thrown at us all the time, it's actually equally as important to cut through all of that noise with a smart, clear way of thinking as it is to be comprehensive and thorough. And so for me, it's like these 2 things live together now, which is, I think, really exciting, actually. Now, another interesting piece of all this, because I think part of the conversation's always been, well, am I going to lose my job? Is this going to be something that, puts me out of business? I don't think we're at a risk of doing that or being in that position quite yet. But I will say this, Charlie GPT currently has a plus option. You can spend $20 a month, you get access to it even in high traffic times of the day. So there's a recognized value. People recognize the value in paying for this and getting some benefit from working with it. Just in the same way that you also should be seeing and recognized for the value that you create, which I think is more, this is where which is to me where creativity and the value of what we can do is really going to stay protected for a while, is that we aren't based on, the answers we're going to come up with haven't been written yet. They don't exist. They haven't been published as websites. They haven't been digitized as books because they don't yet exist. That is the world that we can live in, and that has value. It has real value. You should feel confident and secure in expressing or trying to capture that value. And so for me, that is really how I'm sort of netting out on this at the moment, which could change, but that's where I am today. If you're interested, we do have a magazine that we've launched recently, and this week's issue is actually about this exact subject, where, again, we're sort of obsessing about it like most people are. I know it's maybe a bit overdone, but I think there's still so much potential to find in this subject. So that's it. Thank you.
That's great. That's great, Paddy. You're not alone. In fact, I did ask ChatGPT too about collaboration, just to see what would come up, and and then you keep pushing back, and it evolves and evolves. So it's a wonderful tool. Well done. Really fascinating. So questions. I'm not sure if anyone in the audience has any questions for our speakers immediately, but I'll just get started asking you a few questions. And it got me to thinking, Paddy, you and I are in a RGD firm owners group, and we went through the panic together talking about, how difficult it was transitioning, or it was easy to transition, but then we transitioned and we were in this space working remotely, and we were kind of missing our offices. Our offices were sitting empty, and we were wondering, do we need our offices? And we started to prove the concept that you can be remote. Raphael, you guys are all working remotely, but you get together to have social connection, right? Ranee, you have a great meeting space that people can come to and gather. And it's very collaborative, right? So we've got different models. And I know, Paddy, you've kept the office, which is another aspect of collaboration. So collaboration can happen in many different ways. Does anybody want to talk about where we are in 2023 coming out of the pandemic and where we think we're going?
Maybe I'll start, only because I was like slightly distracted when Paddy was talking, because somebody did just walk in, and it's another designer, right? But I feel like DesignWith has become a space for all the designers who are working remotely. Maybe I throw that out, because everyone's offices have been all remote and everyone's craving that community. And I think DesignWith is benefiting.
It's a great name, by the way, because you could franchise this thing, this not-for-profit thing. And Raphael, you talked about intentional collaboration, which is a lovely idea, and just the trust aspect. Like, it's really made me feel warm about how you guys are, or how you are all working together. Do you see that collaboration? Like, to me, it shouldn't even matter that you're remote. Like, we have to move away from this notion that It has to be one or the other. It's not remote or in person. It's just work. But we're still hung up on talking about the individual ways we are doing this currently. You seem to be pulling it off well at different.
Yeah, I think what has helped us is actually build genuine relationships inside the company, and getting to know each other. Now, here's always a catch, because we have the luxury of talking to each other because we're a small team. And when it comes to bigger teams, I think there's a challenge there of finding that genuine relationships. And that's where I think taking a step forward as an individual, as a designer, if you really want to bring that quality work out there, I think taking that initiative to have honest conversations with people, one-on-one in your team, and creating that trusted circle around collaborating, I think that for sure helps. And that is what we have been trying to do here. And when it comes on the client side, that's a whole different game, because you don't get to build those deeper relationships. I think there is where when you have the confidence to strategically orient your collaborative session, that would for sure help us.
Ranee, thinking about academia and thinking about your students, how are they? What are their needs? Imagine coming through, you've been through the system during the pandemic or through the pandemic, you've come out the other side, and now you have all these options on how to work. You didn't necessarily have those options in the design world. You worked at a studio. There were people working remotely, but you definitely went to work in a studio. How are the expectations changing today for students?
Oh, I think we're only seeing sort of the effects of it now. Something I forgot to mention to the group was I'm on sabbatical this year. So it was such a welcome break for me, because it was so exhausting taking everything online. And imagine doing everything studio related, but online, right? So I think, so I am in touch with all the other profs who are in person now, but I think we're seeing the consequences of having done it remotely. Like, I think we had to teach students to do like 3-dimensional things and equipment and software and all these things, but remotely. So I think I don't know if I'm answering your question properly, but I don't know if I know the answer of it yet.
Well,
I think,
yeah, and that's fair. You're right. Forgot you're on sabbatical. You're a very busy person who's on sabbatical. But that's a fair question. And when the design schools have students coming in, so they are coming to the studio to work in person. So expectations once they graduate will be, I suppose we have to see.
I mean, I would love to see everything just blast open, which I don't think will happen. Is that I'm thinking, since we're online, can I then be teaching with somebody not in Toronto? Like, that's what I was pushing for at one point. I was like, since we're online, let's just be completely online. But obviously I'm not running the school. And I think that would be a whole other, I don't know, I'm sure all these things that I don't even know, right? Policies in place and what we can't do.
Paddy, I have a question for you from the audience, and I'm going to put you in the hot seat here. What is the role of leaders in collaborative work streams? What I mean is, I hearken back to the old saying that a camel is a horse designed by a committee. So at what point are creative decisions not by a collaborative approach?
I mean, having had maybe too much experience in large corporate environments and understanding how those dynamics often work, I would say that there's a pessimistic answer to the question, which is that anytime you go into an ecosystem of that nature, there are forces outside of the control of anyone that are sort of the invisible forces of decision making. And it's extraordinarily difficult to make company changing decisions in those kinds of environments without having a very collaborative approach that is really, I think, often from the inside out, where it's about, deal making, coalition building, just really kind of living in the kind of, there's this old saying, strategy or culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think that's very true. But the thing is, culture is really in many ways a collaboration activity. And so that's the pessimistic answer. The less pessimistic answer is that people often just want to be heard, and that is also a collaborative act. And we found that a lot of the processes we use in more traditional corporate environments are founded on the idea that it has to be about listening first. And so the first step for us is listening. The second step is synthesizing everything we've heard and playing it back to people to say, is this what you've heard? And we found that 9 times out of 10, we get better results if we do it that way, rather than us taking a view, going in, talking to 1 or 2 people, coming out with a point of view, and then it's falling flat because just no one's been listened or no one's heard. And so I don't know. I think that there's kind of 2 sides of that coin, but really it does come down to listening first.
Excellent. Thank you. We have a couple of, actually, these are great questions. Thank you, audience. There's one that I'm just going to read out here, and you can decide who wants to answer this. It's very on topic. As a freelance designer working fully remotely for a company that works in a hybrid model, I feel that I'm not included as much in collaboration. Do you have any suggestions on how freelancers can be more involved with collaboration? Raphael, that might be something that you've come to, not to put you in that model, but you definitely have some comments that you could probably include for this person.
For sure. Yeah. It's hard, I think, as a freelancer to create a collaborative environment, because you'll always feel out because you're alone and you're trying to fix problems. I think for me, what has helped is talking to different freelancers. That has for sure helped. And when you, I would like to understand, is this on a client to freelance? If I had to talk about from a client to freelance designer perspective, I think making sure that you communicate the value, if you're trying to collaborate, what does collaboration with your client actually makes, will help. Having a 15-minute conversation with them around, hey, I would like to get your help on this. I'm trying to figure this out. What are your thoughts on this? And if it is fully remote, I think creating a trusted circle of freelancers and other designers, and going on LinkedIn, finding other freelance designers, that is actually helpful. You can get connections, create connections, talk to them, and make friends online, and also make friends from school. And if you have any, that's also really helpful.
That's great. And this is a tough one, and it depends on how fully remote you are. I mean, I have a story of a colleague who has a remote designer working with their team, and this person is going to fly out to meet everyone in person. So at least they have some social connection. So that's not a bad idea if you can do that. And it really depends on how fully remote you are. But, even just a single meeting a week, even Ranee, you came back from Oslo, just makes a big difference meeting people in their place to change the way you collaborate. Another question here, Raphael, you're very popular, but anyone can answer this, but this is in particular around remote. Have you had clients concerned about your fully remote model? Do you pitch against more traditional firms with a location? And if so, how do you present like a tour, or how do you have meetings in person, presentations in person? That's a question for you or Dom. Go ahead.
Yeah, Dom is also on the call, so he can share. But I think in my experience, while working with the clients, I don't know about the earlier sessions that they have with our leads, but in my experience with working directly with the clients, I haven't faced any direct push around working collaboratively. People are actually pretty open to work if you're fully working remotely. And if we had to give a we don't really push back against traditional. I don't think we do. If we do, correct me, Dom, if we do push back on traditional firms, I don't think we do that. I think we have had both hybrid models sometimes, and we have also met clients in a co-working space and did some collaborative efforts, collaborative sessions with them when needed, and if possible, yeah.
Yeah, you could meet at DesignWith, right? They have a big open space when you're in Toronto, no problem.
Love to drive 5 hours down Toronto.
And I'm going to read one other question here. We have about 5 minutes left. So this one is interesting. How much of your time % should you spend collaborating and then working in your design cave? I love it, design cave. Paddy, we were talking about the word isolation, and you're right. That might have not been the right question that we posted about isolation, because you're not always isolated, but that is a relative idea. Do you have any thoughts you want to come back to that on?
I'm trying to think what ChatGPT would say. No,
Charlie.
Yeah, Charlie. I mean, but I do think that it actually, this sounds, I'll give a direct answer, and okay, let me do what I think is actually the way we should be thinking about this, which is that I think the right answer in a way is that we should be working in whatever percentage you need to at the given moment, depending on what the task is, depending on what the project is, depending on how you're feeling, all those things. That to me is like the right answer. I think the answer maybe with a bit more kind of like, guts is it should probably be exactly 50-50, right? Like you got to be half your time just with heads time down thinking about the task specifically and working really through the problems, and then the other half of your time should be bouncing everything you've come to on your own with the voices of others. So that's my attempt at giving a sensible and then maybe a more bold answer.
Yeah, love the design cave. We're all very familiar with that feeling. And Dom from Different posted a comment here, just I think on the remote, how clients feel about that if you were all remote. And he put, most clients themselves are struggling with issues of hybrid, remote, in person. They have learned from the pandemic that it can be done, and most of the time it isn't an issue. So fair response. But these are moving targets as we kind of go through this next era, as the climate warms up in terms of the spring and the summer. Will we shift our expectations about meeting again? So we'll be very curious about that. Anyway, does anyone have any other comments that they want to add? Thanks, Paddy, for replying to Kelly. We are going to wrap up now. It's 1:57, so I'm just going to do some closing notes here while Paddy's replying to Kelly. See, that's very collaborative.
Well, I mean, I could maybe, instead of typing it, I could just say, like, what I was going to say was,
sure.
Yeah, like I think that the answer to that question, as I would see it, is that you probably do need to introduce occasional periodic collaborative working sessions as a bigger team, because when you got caught up in the day-to-day, it's hard to address some of the bigger issues that are always sort of your foundation. If you can have these bigger picture conversations every now and then you can get into some of the bigger strategic questions that aren't about like the day-to-day tactics. I think there are different environments for that. So like collaborate about getting to those deeper questions. I think if you do those every now and then, it'll help you get to the right answers.
Great response. Thank you very much. Listen, thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you to our speakers, Ranee, Paddy, Raphael. This is going to be a moving target subject, and maybe we can host something in person at DesignWith. But the future of work is about creating culture. It's about creating a culture that sort of encourages collaboration and trust and teamwork. And it's not reliant necessarily on where we are, but how we do it. Our following event will be in the spring, and which will be around healthcare and well-being. And then in the fall, it's going to be on life-centered design. This may be an in-person workshop with some speakers, so stay tuned for more on that. Thanks to Lauren and Steve for all your support with DesignMeets. And thanks to everyone for taking an hour out of their day. Thanks, guys. Thanks, everyone.